Hello, I'm Jeff, and welcome to Snap Talk, your podcast supplement. Usually when I try to do one of these things, I try to find a way to link together a game that I'm playing into the topic. However, this most certainly doesn't do that, unless you want to imagine that if Spark the Electric Jester is Mike Machad, then Sonic the Hedgehog is an older, better, and actually well-liked website manager. If you've been around YouTube the past few days, you might have heard about a hashtag movement called Change the Channel, referring to what is now becoming a quick demise of Channel Awesome, a site that was the home of several content producers, including the Nostalgia Critic, up until a couple days ago. I'll spare the details for those that actually worked at the site because it's their story to tell, so here's the gist of it. Earlier this month, a group of former producers created a Google Doc in which they aired their grievances against the site, which include but are not limited to accusations against Channel Awesome CEO Mike Machad for his gross and inept management, Doug and Rob Walker for their complicitness, and a former producer for sexual misconduct, which was just about confirmed with a poor editing job by Machad to be the late Justin Jew Wario Carmichael. As of recording, there appears to only be a couple of producers remaining, with the Walkers appearing to have left with a couple of Nostalgia Critic episodes left to air. Now, as I said, I never worked at the site. As a matter of fact, neither Chris, Damon, Scott, nor myself have worked at Channel Awesome. But we did work at a startup website once upon a time, and that's where this video comes in. Not necessarily as another kick to Channel Awesome, but more as a talking point as to what happens with people creating new websites. Think of it as the riddle of the new website. Now, the site we used to work at, which we commonly call the old site on this channel, was Operation Rainfall, the former campaign to bring over Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower, which morphed into a niche gaming site around the middle of 2012. Now, as for Chris, Scott, and myself, we were all pretty much there from 2012 to late 2015, early 2016. And while I'm sure there are definitely things we could get into specific details about, we'll leave that to the old site. Now, originally when I heard about this, it was from a former contributor from the old site who I will leave nameless. And while he did say not all of it related to the old site, it seemed like some of the stuff was similar, as in form of communication between management and the rest of the contributors. And yeah, I guess you could, I don't know, it was difficult because most of my time was as part of management. I mean, I was the editor-in-chief of the site from early 2013 to early 2016, so my view of this might be a little skewed. But it's not like we didn't attempt to communicate with people. We had various different open forums for the contributors to communicate, not just with each other, but with us as management. And we did make sure to tell them, look, if you guys have issues, you can come to us, you can tell us what's going on, and we'll try to make things better. And yeah, I mean, there were some people who were like, we've tried, but you haven't really, it seems like you're not really listening. But I do have to wonder how much of that is just being a bunch of new people to journalism, or I guess in the case of Channel Awesome, to video producing, who are just trying to figure things out all at the same time. I mean, some of the things that happened at Channel Awesome, obviously, you should never have happened to begin with. Same for some things at the old site. But there's only really so much you can do while you're still trying to learn on the job. The best you can do is just learn not to do the wrong things again. And while he didn't necessarily bring this up, I did notice some things when listening to other people talk about Channel Awesome. For one in particular, Pat the NES Punk, on a recent podcast of his. He was never on the site, but he did try to get onto the site a couple of times. And in his interactions with producers of the site, he noticed that it seemed a bit cliquey, in that they would only really communicate with other people in Channel Awesome. And maybe even further cliquey in communicating maybe with just those of similar interest. And yeah, I think we can agree that a lot of things in life can get a bit cliquey. You have your own little group within the much larger group. I can definitely say that there were definitely cliques within our band program back in high school. As for the old site, yeah, there were definitely some cliques there. But I think it's also worth mentioning that there's a difference between a clique and a clique. I'm going to use some wrestling groups here to describe what I'm talking about. The first is known as BSK, the Bone Street Crew. Now, this was a group that featured The Undertaker, Rikishi, Paul Bearer, and some other really large dudes who liked wrestling, liked bikes, and were just generally tough guys. But from all appearances, weren't necessarily interested in screwing up the booking of anything. So they were just guys who liked the same things that just hung out. Meanwhile, there was another group called The Clique. And this was guys like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Razor Ramon, Diesel, X-Pac. These were guys that, yeah, they were all friends, but they also were very instrumental in getting themselves over. They were very into the politics of wrestling booking. So when someone says that something's cliquey, you should definitely look into seeing if it's something like a BSK or a The Clique. And I will say that while I did have some people I did take under my wing, it was more BSK than clique. But I think if you do enough research, you can see that there was a clique within the old site, and the people are no longer there. And it kind of goes into something else I've seen recently. Our local NFL team, the Detroit Lions, they had a coaching search this past winter. And one of the blogs that I followed that dealt with the Detroit Lions was looking at various books as to what they would look for in a new coaching regime, I guess is the right way to say it. And the one thing that seemed to come to him throughout all this was that it was never the best coaches that worked, but the ones that worked together that were the best. So maybe you'll understand from that why we had a particular clique just get removed from the old site. I suppose the weirdest part about all this is sort of remembering that Channel Awesome is a thing. And I think part of that is simply because of how big YouTube has gotten to the point where YouTube and Google almost have a monopoly on all this. I mean, there's Twitch, which seems like it's trying to compete. I don't know if they've gone past gaming, but at the very least, they're trying. Even if somehow Channel Awesome comes back from the dead, starts getting new producers in, I don't see it being anything other than a relic of the past. And pretty much I'd have to say that with any sort of site like that, unless you have your own proprietary video streaming software code. And again, it's because YouTube kind of has this monopoly. It's where all the money is. It's where all the ad revenue is. I mean, there's some over on Twitch, but this is primarily where it happens. As for something like Op Rainfall, yeah, you could definitely do a site like that. But here's the thing that you need to remember is that we weren't necessarily without controversy either. We had a bunch of stumbling blocks that unfortunately were very public and were rather disastrous in terms of bringing readers to the site. Now, we had a hot start because we were essentially a group that was trying to get Japanese games over onto the Nintendo Wii, which generally didn't have a lot of them. I wasn't around for the campaign, but I know that they got a lot of good press from places like IGN. So at that point, it made sense to try to morph into a game journalism site. But as I said, or I think I said, well, I'll say it now, none of us were really experienced in writing news. even if it's just on a subject of gaming. So it was all very new to us, but I would like to think that we, unlike a certain CEO of another website, I'd like to think that we actually learned in the process. But then comes the problem of, while we're learning, we're making mistakes, some again very public, and we're losing readers, and we're not necessarily getting any new readers because you got a reputation of all the things that you did wrong, even though you're not doing those wrong anymore. So then comes the question of, what exactly do you do if you're someone new trying to set out on your own? Do you heed the advice of those like Jim Sterling who say, just go and do it on your own? Or perhaps you do something like go work at a place, preferably one that'll pay you, because while exposure is nice, having the ability to put something on your dinner tray is even nicer. Go somewhere like that, build up your own personal following for a couple years, and then go out on your own. Now, there's risks involved with all of that, because if you go the former route, you could have a lot of great positive buzz with you, but as soon as you fall on your face, people might just turn up their noses at you and go away. Then again, who knows what'll happen in the 2 years while you're working for an IGN or What Culture or a Destructoid. I don't know. To me, it seems like if you're going to try something new, it helps when you have a following who already knows you. But that's just me. I'm sure you have your own opinions, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below. So yeah, that's it for this episode of Snap Talk. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with others. I'm sure you'll have a different opinion to what was stated, so feel free to comment down below. We can talk about it. If you have an idea for another Snap Talk, leave a suggestion below, and if I feel I can get enough material together, I may talk about it in a future episode. I'm Jeff from Some Nerdy Arguments, and I'll talk to you soon.